I thought I would share something with you that's kind of fun and something you can do yourselves and something you can do with people you love or your patients or the families. Takes a few minutes to think it through. And then once you do, or to imagine it through, so you can kind of hear this one coming. But once you do, it's yours and you can do whatever you want with it. So I'll explain it to you first, and then I'm going to ask you to go through this little exercise where you're remembering something. And I give you a heads up, I'm going to ask you to remember something in your lives that sometime when you felt good. And it could be anything. When I was first learning this, I'm not a trauma therapist, as I think everyone knows, but I did get some wonderful training in some of the grounding techniques that are used in trauma therapy. And this is one of them. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, that probably doesn't work so well, but it really works great. So it has to do with recalling a memory that feels good to you, and then intensifying the memory by making it more vivid, where you go through what did it look like, what did it feel like, what did it smell like. So that's what I'm going to be asking you to do. And I'd like you to be thinking up some memory you'd like to use for this purpose. Really can be anything that feels okay to you. There's not a particular type that's good. Although I'm biased, I like my memory, so I think everyone else should have one that's like mine, which is not true. But the one that I came up with when I was asked to do this was, it surprised me. It was something from when I was 5 that I didn't even know I remembered, frankly. It just jumped into my head and I thought, okay, that one. And it had to do with when I was a child and my family would go to the beach on the East Coast. This was in New Jersey, and we'd go out into the water, into the ocean together. You could do that fairly easily on the East Coast. They're waves, but they don't knock you out. And so I was small, and I'd be holding hands with my older brother, my mother, and my father, and we'd walk out into the water until the water was over my head, and we would just go up and down with the waves. Not the actual waves, but the swells of the water. That was my memory. That was the one I thought of. So I'll refer back to that when I give you some examples. But before I do, I want to give you an idea of how broad a spectrum this can be. I was teaching this for a while to um, advanced pulmonary patients when I was in a pulmonary palliative care clinic, because it's not breath related. It was something that could help ground them, and boy, did they want something. So I thought, well, let's try this out and see how it works. And it was really effective for them. But one example, there was one gentleman, probably about 65, and his memory that he thought of was a Christmas morning when his 4 grown daughters were children, when he was able to give all of them bikes on the same Christmas morning. And his memory was them coming down the steps and seeing the bikes. That was it. And he loved that. And he could be outside dragging along, or rolling along, I should say, a very heavy, large oxygen tank. I don't think he had one of the smaller ones then. And he could be panicking about his breath, and he would remember that, and he'd be okay. So I want to remind you of something. I know all of you know this. You know how much the mind can affect the body with regard to bad things. I can get myself really upset about something, and my heart can start beating faster. My breath can start coming faster. And it works in just the opposite way. I can also have my mind affect my body and allow it to calm down. Right? Makes sense, doesn't it? So another example would be someone in the same pulmonary clinic. I had told her my example, and she said, oh, I used to do that. I used to go out to the beach with my grandpa. And she was in her mid-60s then too. And so that's the memory she remembered. And then I think maybe a week or two later, she was in a pulmonary rehab clinic or pulmonary rehab place where, at UCSF, where she was practicing her exercises, and her blood pressure shot up through the ceiling, and the respiratory therapist was calling in the doc, and she remembered her memory. Her blood pressure came all the way down. So it can be quite startling how effective this can be. In my own experience, and this is the last story I'll tell you, then I'll ask you to do it. I frankly, I learned how, and I thought it was fun, and I never used it. I just thought, that's nice. I like remembering it. That's good. And then about 6 months later, I was in a minor car accident in Berkeley. And right in the middle of town, I was going slowly. My airbag didn't even deploy. But I was in a little Prius, and it got totaled. And it was a silly accident. I just wasn't watching. I wasn't looking up for a second. I was reaching for something on the car seat. And the road curved, but I didn't. So I went straight ahead, and there happened to be a light pole there. So I went straight into the light pole. And as you might guess, when I got out of the car, my heart was beating so fast, I don't think I could have even counted it. And I didn't think of it, by the way. I didn't do the exercise then. The police came, they didn't even give me a ticket. I had to be towed back to San Francisco. It wasn't so bad. But by the time I got back to San Francisco and I was waiting for my husband to come and pick me up in the garage, and I was still feeling super tense and stressed. I just wanted to get out of the garage and I had nowhere to go. And I remembered this. And I just remembered it. And when I remembered it, I even could feel the waves going up and down. And it was like having a brain transplant. It was amazing. So I wanted to give you that background to encourage you to give this a try. I've given you some time to think of something. Anyone need more time to think up a memory you'd like to work with? Yeah. Okay. And a few more quick examples. One person I know thought of a place she liked to hike too high in the mountains. Someone else liked sitting in a mountain stream with her feet in the water. Someone else liked a silly running race that she was in where she was supposed to be dragging a float along with her. This was up in the Yukon. I mean, the crazy things people think of, so it could be anything. Okay, so when you're ready, bring your memory to mind and see if within that memory you can focus on one snapshot, if you will, one point in time during that memory. And while you are here in this memory, you may close your eyes if you wish to establish the memory, but you don't have to. And I'd like you to just go through the sensory input that will allow you to remember the memory more clearly. So see if you can remember what time of day it was. Was it nighttime, morning, day? What color is the light where you are? How does the temperature feel on your skin? What can you feel beneath you? If in your memory you're sitting down, what are you sitting on? What do you feel? Or if you're standing, what's beneath your feet? What do you feel beneath you that's supporting you? And where are your feet? Mm. Is there something particular they can feel? Are they in soft sand? Are they in a stream somewhere? What do your feet feel? What are your hands doing in this memory? What can they feel? Is anyone with you? Are you touching them? Maybe you're holding their hand. What do you see right now, right in front of your eyes? What do you see in your imagination? What are you looking at? What can you hear? Are there background sounds or close by sounds? Is there anything you can remember smelling? Is there anything you were tasting? Anything else that you notice in your memory that maybe I didn't call out? When you're ready, you can open your eyes if they were closed. And I would be curious if you wouldn't mind sharing, not everyone, but maybe one or two people, just what your idea was, what your memory was, just in brief, because I love giving one another ideas. I might not have thought of something that someone else thought of, and maybe I like that one in my own life, and I'll come back to it. So if anyone would like to share one or two, just like I said, I liked being in the ocean with my family. You don't have to. Yeah, Mike.
Um, so I, um, when I was a little kid, maybe 7 or 8, growing up in LA, I played ice hockey on a little pee-wee ice hockey team, and my memory was the only time they would give the little kids rink time was super early in the morning. So Saturday mornings at like 4 in the morning, my dad would take me to hockey practice. And the memory was of being this little kid, you know, with my arms out to here because of all the equipment, having my dad put on my skates and lace up my skates and really make them super tight. And such a pleasant memory just to have my dad all to myself and to have him um, getting me snug into my skates and sort of picking me up and putting me on the ice. Very sweet. Thank you for leading me to that memory.
Oh yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? David.
Well, I started with a favorite memory because my granddaughter is almost 4 years old in a couple of months, and we walked about a year ago in this park in Piedmont, and spontaneously, she and I got into an argument, a fun argument where she would say, "That's yellow," and I say, "No, it's Tuesday," and then she'd say, "No, it's green," and I say, "No, it's big," and we just had these non sequitur argument, and she loved it, and I loved it, and I haven't heard her do it with anyone else. It's our special thing. And as I'm not visual, I'm much more auditory. So, but I kind of had a sense of the park. Then my mind shifted to another wonderful memory of my mom's death at age 95. And my younger brother and I were there on the bed, and she looked at us and mouthed, she didn't have the energy, but she said, and she always said her last word she wanted to be, "I love you." Then I switched to a time in the retirement healthcare center that she was in. She would wake up in the middle of the night afraid. And this wonderful nurse that I got to know a bit would come in and immediately say, "You know, Mrs. Bullard, what we always do, I'll be seeing you in all the..." And she would sing that song, and my mom would sing that song, and they would burst into laughter because it would be like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I have that on audio tape. And it's wonderful to retrieve that memory because it's one of my favorite of my whole life. And I hadn't thought of it in a while. So thank you, Judy.
Oh, thank you, David. Thank you both. Yeah. Well, I think we've got time for one more very quick one, but then I know I need to back away and allow the meeting to be what it is. Anyone that has one that you'd like to share? Otherwise, we'll. Okay. Well, I think this is probably a really good note to end on. So let's stop now. And I want to thank everybody. And I just want to suggest, remember, practice it at least once. I know I didn't practice it at all till I was in the car accident, but try it at least once later in the day. And just as David did, if there's some other memory you'd rather use, you can go through that same exercise. But it's the idea of making it really intensely vivid in your mind. And then it becomes like grab and go food. You don't have to think about it. You can just go there. Okay? That's the idea. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Judy, so much. That was wonderful.